Welcome, everybody. Today's workshop is on choosing and paying for college. My name is Mary Day. I'm a staff attorney at Housing and Economic Rights Advocates. We also say HARA, which is a lot shorter, easier to use. And I just want to remind everybody that with this workshop does not set up an attorney-client relationship. There's no confidential agreement. We don't represent you. It's more for informational purposes. All right, we're going to go through how to first evaluate the cost of college in California. California has specific schools that each one of them have different costs, and they each have different type of degrees or programs that are offered depending on which level you go through. And we'll go through each of California's colleges. All right, the easiest college to get accepted to is the California community colleges. Those tend to be a lot less expensive, and they also at the same time don't offer as many degrees or paths for advanced degrees. But there is some programs that allow you to get an associate degree at the community college and then transfer that degree to the California universities kind of on an automatic level. When you apply to the California Community College, there's no minimum GPA, there's no tests required, and no essays are required to be admitted. And that makes it a little easier to be admitted compared to the university or the state system. It's also, as I said, it's a little less expensive. It's currently $46 per unit, and that can add up to about over $1,000 a year for a full-time California resident, and that's for the tuition. Enrollment, there is a California Promise Grant, which will allow you to get your tuition fee waived, meaning you don't have to pay it. And there's more information about that at this website here that I've listed on this page. The next more difficult school to get into, a little more expensive, is California State Universities. Those offer four-year programs. The community colleges only offer two-year programs. Now you can get a bachelor's degree and even in some cases a postgraduate after bachelor's degree. These schools do require eligibility requirements before you can be admitted. In California, there's 23 campuses. They've kind of spread them around the state. And so it is convenient also to commute to these schools. The tuition and enrollment fees are a little higher. Those generally running, depending on the location, between $7,000 to $12,000 a year for a person who's a state resident. These dollar amounts, they don't include books, supplies, housing, or transportation. They're merely the cost of enrolling and getting tuition. This would cover each of the classes that you took. And each campus has slightly different fees. You can check this website here to see which campus you're interested in and then see what the cost of that particular school is. An example here I've shown of the California State University at San Francisco, just to give you some kind of idea of the total annual cost. There, the tuition and fees are $7,500. And that includes the current statewide system fee, CSU, California State University tuition fee, which is $5,742 per academic year. And then San Francisco adds its own campus fees. Typically, books and supplies will run you about $1,100. Food and housing, depending on your lifestyle, about another $18,000. Transportation, this is for someone who's going to be living on campus, so the transportation fees are going to be lower, but the food and housing is going to be higher. Then they account for some personal expenses, eating out or going to a concert. And they estimate that the total annual cost of going to California State University, San Francisco will be about $31,000 per year. Other campuses are available. You could look at them again at the website below. The next level up, which tends to be a little more expensive, is the California University system. There you can get four-year degrees as well, bachelor's degree, and they offer a little bit more postgraduate degrees, medical schools, law schools, and other PhD programs. You also must meet certain eligibility requirements, and then there are fewer campuses. There's 10 campuses, and that includes Davis, Berkeley, Merced, Santa Cruz, and others. They're spread throughout the state, again, a little less easier to commute to if you live in some of more rural areas. There, the tuition enrollment fees are higher. They're roughly $15,000 per year. And again, that doesn't include your books, your supplies, housing, or transportation. There is a specific opportunity plan, which is called the Blue and Gold Opportunity, that will cover the system-wide tuition and fees, that 15,000, for those with an annual family income of less than $80,000. Here's a breakdown of what the University of California system typically costs. If you're living on campus or off campus, the tuition fees are the same. The books and supplies are also going to be the same, and so will the health insurance. Room and board, of course, will be more expensive if you're living on campus. And if you could play with the living off campus depending on your housing situation, living at home, sharing with roommates, you can reduce that cost down quite a bit. And then, of course, if you're living off campus, your transportation fees are going to be higher than someone who lives on campus. So roughly $45,000 a year, a slight difference if you live off campus. And maybe you can cut that down even more, the living off campus, depending on where you live and who you live with and who's paying for your meals and how you manage your meals. So there is a system-wide tuition for all the UC campuses, but then that's, part of the $16,634 incorporates the system-wide fee of $14,934. So all of the UCs have that basic 14,934, and then they have to add specific fees associated with their campus and other fees that they're going to charge you for. You can look at each of the universities by checking that website below. Okay, then there's another type of school offered in California. Those are the nonprofit private schools. Nonprofit means that their goal is not to make money, but they tend to have some kind of a mission statement. Some of the schools that have that are the University of San Francisco, University of Santa Clara, Stanford. You could look at their websites and see what their mission is. They tend to have an educational mission. They have some kind of purpose where they want to have a greater good for society. Their goals are tending to improve students' experience and increasing student success rather than actually generating money for the school. Each of those schools you should check to see if they're accredited, because if you plan to go to law school or further your education, if you don't go to an accredited undergraduate school, that may affect your ability to get higher education. You can check out the WASC Senior College and University Commission. They're the people that monitor accreditation. There's their website there. Tuition and fees for private schools vary quite widely because they're not under any particular umbrella. Each school offers its own plan, 30 to 60,000. Again, that's tuition. It doesn't include books, supplies, housing, or transportation. Also, at some of these schools, they have greater scholarship opportunities as well. Often they do because the alumni have decided that they want to help specific students who are studying in particular fields. And you, again, should go to each website and look what kind of scholarship options that they might offer. So don't be discouraged necessarily by the high tuition, because, you may be able to get quite a benefit from a particular scholarship that can be matched to your particular profile. Okay, there's another category of schools in California. Those are the for-profit private schools. These schools, their mission is to make money. And so you should be pretty wary of those kind of schools because they're not necessarily focused on you yourself getting a great education. They're trying to make money. I'm not saying that they're all bad, but just be aware of the fact that their mission may not be aligned with your goals. There are a lot of schools, though, that are for-profit private schools that have been hit because of the fact that they didn't really offer the education that was promised to students. And there's a lot of these schools that there has been lawsuits, and the Department of Education has given the students special relief because of the bad education that they were given compared to what was promised. These schools tend to be aggressive and they tend to possibly have misleading promises that are made to you. If you have attended one of these schools, we do offer at HERA another workshop on how to manage your student loan debt. So please reach out to HERA if you would like information about how to help you if you did already go to for-profit private school. The other issue with for-profit private schools, they may not have credits that you get by attending those schools. They may not necessarily transfer to other schools. You do need to scrutinize that very carefully as well. And you might not necessarily find employment in the field of study because in general, the for-profit private schools, they don't, again, like the UC system has an overarching umbrella of the University of California, making sure that more or less the schools have, comply with the mission. But each of these schools, there's no necessarily any particular regulation other than just basic laws. And so they can be a little bit loose about what kind of education they offer you. And other schools may not necessarily accept the credit that you got at these for-profit schools because they haven't had the scrutiny that a public school or would get. And they tend to have higher expenses because again, they're trying to make money off of their educational mission. And so you might be wary of the fact that in general, people that go to these schools, they tend to have a higher default inability to pay their student loans if they borrowed to attend these schools. The tuition, again, it varies widely, $10,000 to $20,000. That's for tuition and fees, but not books, housing, and transportation. All right, now we're going to talk about understanding financial aid. Most people need financial aid if they're going to attend a university or a higher education college. So this is an important piece of that component. All right. So there's different sources of financial aid. Some is federal aid that comes from the Department of Education. That includes grants, work study, loans. Federal aid, however, is not available to undocumented students. But the federal aid is quite diverse. It offers many, many different types of loans, and there's a lot of help when you suffer from the inability to pay or you're having financial difficulties. The Department of Education loans, there's some flexibility in how you pay those loans back. The state of California also offers grants, middle class scholarships, and those are specific to the state of California. And some of them are even available to undocumented and non-resident students. There's also institutional aid. That's aid that comes from each of the specific schools. They may offer grants and scholarships and even loans. Each school will have its own program, and so you'd have to look at their profile to see what they offered. And then there's also private aid. There's private scholarships, private student loans. There are directories that can help you, the school itself, the counselor, your high school counselor, though they can help you look for private student aid to help you subsidize your education. There's also grants, which means that you're just given the money. It doesn't mean that you have to pay it back necessarily. You may have to pay it back if you withdraw too early, but in general, the grants are to fund your education and there's no expectation you're going to pay it back. There's also work study programs, which are, again, they're going to be specific to whichever school you go to, but what those do allow you to work part-time while you're enrolled in the school, and that'll help you pay for the cost of attendance. Loans are money that you borrow for college expenses, and there is an expectation that you will pay those back. You can go to the federal government's website and look at studentaid.gov, and you can get an understanding of the different type of aids that are available from the federal government, from the Department of Education. All right, the federal government also offers grants. They offer Pell Grants. Those are people who have an exceptional financial need. The amount varies over time. They do upgrade that amount. Currently, the grant is about $6,895. And at some point it's no longer available. So you cannot continue to go to school. You can't take a degree in nursing and then decide to go back to law school, at some point the grants do max out. I don't remember what the dollar amount is, but you can't rely on Pell Grants for your entire life of looking for education. There's also the FSEOG grants, and they all also are based on financial need. You can get anywhere between $100 and $4,000 a year. There's a teacher education assistant grant that provides up to $4,000 a year to students who are completing a plan or hope to have a career teaching. It can, if you don't end up becoming a teacher, then that grant converts to a loan, and the federal government will then expect for you to pay it back. There's also grants for those that whose parents or guardians served in the Iraq and Afghanistan war. That offers up to $6,502 for those students whose parents were serving in those wars. There's more information again on the federal studentaid.gov website that will give you an idea of what kind of profiles, what expectations are there, and some of the eligibility requirements. All right, let's talk about federal loans. Those are again loans from the Department of Education. The loan landscape in the federal financial aid is a little bit complicated because these loans are made by laws passed by Congress, and their goal is to help specific students. So the subsidized direct loans, those are loans given to students who have a financial need. The second type is the direct unsubsidized. Those are made to undergrad, graduate, and professional students like law school and medical school, but they're not based on financial need. And because of these different purposes, you'll see that the way you have to pay back these loans is a little different. The unsubsidized are a little less forgiving than the subsidized, but they're both very good loans. You get a lot of help if you are having trouble making payments, and there's lots of repayment plans for both of these. There's also direct plus loans. Those are made to graduate or professional students, those people going to law school or other baccalaureate grad schools. Then there's also parent plus loans. Those are loans that the parent takes out to help pay for their child's education. It's a loan that the parent has the obligation to pay back. A lot of people get confused and think that the loan is actually the child's loan, but no, it's the parent's obligation. And the Parent Plus loans, they have a lot less flexibility when you struggle to make payments. There's another type of federal loan, which is a consolidated loan. That what that means is it's sort of like the ability to combine all your loans into one type of loan. If you do get this if you do graduate and you have loans and you're struggling to pay, that's one way that you can maybe get relief by consolidating your loans. You can reach out to legal aid or go on to studentaid.gov and look at what happens if you do consolidate your loans, the downside and the upside of doing that. All right. How much money can you borrow if you want to go to college and you want to get federal student loans? An undergraduate can borrow anywhere up from $5,500 to $12,500 per year, and it depends on what school and whether you are a dependent or not of a guardian or a parent. If you want to go to graduate or professional school, you can borrow up to $20,500 each year as a direct unsubsidized loan. Again, unsubsidized again means it's not based on financial need. You can also get direct plus loans if your costs are not covered by the direct unsubsidized loan. So that means if your cost is more than $20,500, you can possibly get the direct plus loans to help pay for the additional amount. And also, if you're, as I mentioned, there's the Parent Plus loans. And those parent plus loans, those are also the amount that's available. It depends on which college you're applying for. You can go to studentaid.gov to look at the different type of loans that are offered for each of these type of loans that are available. Okay, Federal student loans. What's the advantage of taking federal student loans? Well, one, they have a fixed interest rate. So when you start out, whatever interest rate you agreed to when you first started, you agreed to the loan, that's never not going to change. You're not going to get a variable, you're not going to get a surprise. So your payment amount essentially will remain the same with that particular loan. You don't need to have a credit check, and you do not co-sign federal student loans. So a lot of people, like I said, with the Parent Plus, they think that it's a co-sign situation. It's not. So there is no co-signing with federal loans, except and you do not have to repay federal student loans until you get out of college, either if you graduated or you drop before the half of the semester or the quarter. And there's a grace period after you get out of college where they give you a little bit of time to get a job or do your next step. But as long as you're in school, the federal government does not expect for you to make payments on these loans. If you have the subsidized student loans, the Department of Education doesn't expect for you to pay interest during the periods when you're not making payments. All right, there's also for federal student loans, there's income-driven repayment plans. That's where if you don't like the basic payment that's required of you, you can get on an income-driven repayment plan that allows you to get lower monthly payments. It might change the time that you have to pay back the loan. If you just go on a standard repayment, it's a 10-year expectation that you'll pay off your loan in 10 years. But some of these income-driven repayment plans, because you're paying less each month, the time that it takes to pay back that loan may be extended. All right, there's also a loan forgiveness program, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. That's a typo there. What that does is if you work for certain eligible employers, such as the government or a nonprofit, you can have very low monthly payments, and at the end of 10 years, they will cancel or forgive your entire debt that remains. And also, the federal student loan allows for discharges under certain circumstances, cancellation. And like, for example, if you become permanently disabled, the federal government has a program where you can have your asked to get your federal student loans entirely canceled because of the fact that your disability probably affects your ability to earn income. Okay. There's been a lot of news lately about the federal student loan, the SAVE plan. The SAVE plan has been under attack from people who do not like the fact that the SAVE plan was giving quite a bit of debt relief. One of the benefits of that program is that if there was interest on your loan, it didn't capitalize. That means it didn't get added to your loan. What people have seen is because interest normally capitalized, what that means is the interest gets added to the principal balance, and your loan over time, if you're on an income-driven repayment plan, would just get larger and larger. And you'd say, my goodness, I'm making payments, but my loan is growing. How does that happening? It's because the interest was capitalizing. The SAVE plan was designed not to have interest capitalized and the ability to pay back that loan within 10 years if the original loan was 12,000 or less. Right now, that plan is not available. We expect to know what the status of the plan is by the end of 2024, roughly, could be early 2025, because we expect that the litigation, the lawsuits are likely to go up to the United States Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will weigh in if they do like the idea that the SAVE plan, as it's designed, should be allowed. There's also some public service loan forgiveness litigation that's part of the SAVE plan. They're just saying that they don't like the fact that people are getting debt relief after they borrowed federal government loans. There's also a borrower defense to repayment. That's based on maybe if the school lies to you or they put you in a program that you're really not eligible for. There is a plan that you can currently use if you graduate from one of those programs and ask the federal government to cancel those loans. There were some new rules that were going to make it easier for people to apply. And again, because of litigation, those rules have put on ice, essentially. They're not in effect. Okay. However, the current Department of Education is trying to have some new programs that will help with student loan debt relief, and their expectation is to roll those out in 2025 after they go through the process that is needed in order to vet those laws and get those laws put into place. Okay, California, as I mentioned, California also has financial aid that they offer. They also offer grants for attending both the University of California, the state schools, and community colleges. They don't offer grants for private education. If you were a child that was in foster youth and you were dependent as of the age of 18, you may get this Chafee grant that's offered to help you while you're attending college. There's also a middle class scholarship offered in California. So if your family has income and assets that are up to 217,000, you can get a scholarship to attend UC or the state campuses. There's also a GI Bill, California Military Department GI Bill Award that helps people who is an active member in the National Guard, the state military, or naval militia. California also offers the law enforcement personal dependence grant. That's for children or spouses of California law enforcement peace officers or permanent or full-time firefighters who were killed or became 100% disabled while on duty. The children or spouses of those people, they are off. There's a specific grant, meaning it doesn't have to be paid back from California. You can get more information about these programs by going to the California Student Aid Commission. The website's on this page. Okay, I mentioned earlier the Promise Grant for community college. The California Promise Grant waives enrollment fee tuition at any California community college throughout the state. Waive means you don't have to pay it. This grant is based on financial need, and so you need to look at the particular program, whether you might qualify. It doesn't cover textbook supplies, housing, or transportation. It just covers tuition. So you need to figure out, you don't want to apply for this if you can't even afford the textbooks and housing while you're in school. So you want to weigh all that up. You must maintain a grade point average of 2.0 or higher, and you must complete your coursework. If you're interested or think you might be eligible, the website here tells you how you might be able to benefit if you're attending a community college, and there's also applications for this program. Again, it's for a community college grant. Okay, how do you apply for federal financial aid? That's the FAFSA. FAFSA, that's fun to say. Free application for federal student aid. That is the federal Department of Education. That's the application process that you can use. It's a free program. Do not pay anyone to help you. There's people that will help you for free. The federal government offers an information center. They've got step-by-step instructions. You might get a counselor at your school that could help you out. And it walks you through an estimator, you might estimate your costs. That way you can weigh in whether you want to go to a UC, community college first, or state school. It also has tips. If you think you definitely want to go to a UC, you might want to look at some of the tips that the federal government offers on this website here. If you're an undocumented student, then you need to apply through the California DREAM Act application because the federal government doesn't offer any assistance for those who are dreamers. Okay, here's how you would apply for the California DREAM Act. That allows for certain undocumented and non-resident students to receive financial aid in the state of California. That would include Cal Grants, the Middle Class Scholarship, and the Community College Promise Grant. Here's the requirements for the DREAM Act. You have to attend a California high school for 3 years or attain equivalent credits. You have to have attended a California elementary or secondary school for a total of 3 years. You have to graduate from a California high school, pass the California high school proficiency exam or get a GED. You need to enroll in an accredited and qualified California college or university. And you have to fill out an affidavit stating that you haven't the intent to become a legal immigrant in the United States. There's the website where you can apply, and there's also tips for UC admissions using the DREAM Act. More information for Dreamer students at the csac.ca.gov website listed here. Okay, there's also other resources that might be available. I've listed some of the websites here. There's a community college system financial aid and resource. There's the California Student Aid Commission. We mentioned them earlier. They've got lots of resources. You could even call them. And they even have a program called Cash for College workshops, where if you attend a workshop, it might help subsidize your cost of education. Okay, private schools, as I mentioned earlier, they do also offer scholarships. Those tend to be merit-based, meaning like your accomplishments, your GPA perhaps, or, maybe you're an athlete or something where you've made some kind of accomplishment that you can quantify, as opposed to having a financial need. Some of these scholarships are also geared towards those who come from military families. There are plenty of tools that you could look for these scholarships. It's worth your effort to go through each one of them, because you might find a scholarship that's particularly geared towards your particular profile. In other words, if you came from Guam and your father was in the military, or your mother was a nurse, or you're 5'7", you might find that there's a scholarship that is geared, and your profile matches that what they're looking for in order to fund. And it's very useful. It's a little time intensive because you have to look at each of these databases. And you might also get help from a librarian or your college or career school counselor at your school. Keep in mind that if you do decide to also apply for federal student aid, that scholarship will impact the total amount of aid, because they do want to factor in the other benefits that you're getting towards paying for your college education. Okay. You can also find that some banks and credit unions, they also offer loans. And sometimes you've heard of Sallie Mae. Again, most of these, then they will look at your credit score, because it's a private lender and they want to make sure they think that the credit score gives some indication of how reliable you are in being able to pay the loan back. The private student loans, they're not really monitored by, or there's no really kind of umbrella like the UC system. So basically those private interest rates are going to depend on the market, and some, like I mentioned before, they may have variable interest rates. The rates will change over time, which means that your monthly payment to pay back that loan, that may increase over time and make it more difficult for you to pay them. There is no loan forgiveness, no cancellation. There's no income-based repayment plan. So whatever the promissory note, the agreement for the private loan says is your payment, that's going to be your expectation that you will make that payment throughout the life of paying back that loan. So it's a good idea then, in general, I would say it's a good idea to first explore your federal Department of Education FAFSA aid that's available before considering a private student loan. And unless, I can't think of any reason, but I would never refinance a federal student loan into a private loan, just because you lose all of those protections. All right. If you do go and look for federal financial, or not federal, if you look for financial aid and you get an award letter from the college, they will show you all of the different types of help you're going to be getting for paying for your college. Some award letters kind of break it down like this one here. They break it out down between gifts, gift aid, meaning you don't have to pay it back, and then self-help. This one calls it self-help. Those are basically loans or a work study program that you have to make some kind of you yourself have to contribute to in order to get that benefit. And then they will also break down the cost of going to the school. And hopefully the cost of going to the school is covered by all of the different grants that you're going to be offered. And otherwise, you need to figure, how am I going to come up with the additional funds? So you should look really carefully at how the financial aid letter breaks down the different ways that you might be paying for your college and compare that to the estimated cost of attending that college. Each school will have different estimates and also different ways that you could get assistance paying that loan back. Okay, this is a different type of award letter where they mix the grants and the loans, the gifts and the things that you're going to have to pay back together. They basically break it down into semesters. So they show the fall semester and the spring. They've got a dean scholarship. That would be something you wouldn't have to pay back. There's a university grant, the Pell Grant, and there's also the federal SEOG grant. And then they show the loans below. They don't necessarily separate these out. And then hopefully they will be able to show that the 43,300 annual subsidy that you're getting here will cover the cost of going to that particular school. Again, each school will have different profiles or different offers of subsidies that they would help you for. So you need to explore on a school by school basis. Okay, this is another financial aid award letter. This only shows direct costs, which are the equivalent of tuition and fees. They show you what they expect. Those are probably going to be solid numbers, the tuition fees, because the school knows what that is, but they don't know they can't really predict accurately your housing and your transportation costs. There's probably a reasonable estimate on the cost to pay for your books and things that you might need, your lab fees if you're doing science or chemistry program. But this award letter doesn't really look at the total cost of attending the school. So what they've done here is they've looked at tuition fees, and then they've looked at all the possible subsidies, and then they subtract the financial aid from the tuition, and they come up with a net cost of 5,800. But again, that's not looking at additional costs of housing, books, and transportation. So it's not going to be 5,800. It's going to be higher because it's not factoring in everything. So you really need to look at these financial aid award letters carefully and see exactly what kind of costs they're including and then what kind of aid they're actually including in the expectation, and whether really the net amount, the amount that you're going to have to figure out how to come up with, is something that you can actually afford. If you can't understand these financial award letters, do go to your school's financial aid office and ask them to help you interpret it, because this is key, because you're going to be going to school for at least a couple of years and you don't want to end up with a surprise bill that suddenly you have to withdraw, and then there's consequences for withdrawing early in terms of the debt that you might have, and it also affects your career goal. So really look at these award letters carefully and get help if you can't figure it out. Okay, I also want to caution you, you really need to be careful of financial aid scams. You should never pay anyone for help in figuring out how to pay for college. There's school counselors, there's the federal government, there's lots of ways, librarians. You should not pay for someone to help you figure out how to pay for college. Reach out to my organization. If you're struggling for resources, we're more than happy to point you in the right direction for places that might help you figure it out. You do not have to pay for filling out the federal FAFSA form. That's something like I mentioned earlier, the federal government offers lots of little tips and tools and phone numbers. So don't pay anyone to fill out that form either. Do not give in to pressure tactics in general. If in general someone says, buy now, you must take advantage of this now, we guarantee, give me your bank account, your credit card. Right, as soon as that's a red flag. That's a red flag right there. If you feel your heart rate go up, you feel anxious, you feel like someone is pushing you to make a decision quickly, especially when it comes to money, you need to take a deep breath, step back and say, you know what? I will take your information. I appreciate it. Give me some time. I'll get back to you. Make these financial decisions on your own time. Don't fall and give in to pressure tactics. They're designed to make you make decisions that are not necessarily in your interest. If you do think that you've been subjected to some kind of financial aid fraud, the Federal Trade Commission has some resources. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and California's Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. All of these organizations might be able to assist you if you are a victim of fraud, financial aid fraud. Okay, now we're going to look at when you do decide to look at schools, one of the things you want to look at is what are they going to offer you? If you go to that school, what is the likely chance that you're going to have a successful career based on the assumption that if you went to that school for a particular program, that it's actually going to provide you the benefit that you are expecting? Okay, so there's a lot of tools available for you to look at a school and evaluate whether what you think is going to be delivered to you is actually going to be delivered to you. There's this college scored card website here. It's produced by the Department of Education. It'll show you graduation rates, meaning how many people enroll compared to how many people actually graduate. That's obviously a key piece of information, because if you got a lot of people enrolling and not many people graduating, that should make you kind of wary of whether you want to go to that school, because you don't want to start school, get student loan debt, and all of a sudden realize you can't graduate. It also will show you the costs, and you can do a comparison between schools. There's also on each school, they're required to have a school performance fact sheet. That's supposed to be on their website. It has graduation and salary information, meaning what kind of expectation of the people who graduate, what kind of salary they earn. It might be lumped together. So if you've got people who are in physical education programs versus someone who's in law, a higher paying position or construction, they may lump those all together. I'm not sure how reliable the salary information. If they break it down into particular careers, that might be more useful. The college scorecard would be more reliable. It's a Department of Education scorecard, probably a little less biased than the school's own performance fact sheet, but doesn't hurt to look. More information, the better. There's a website called ProPublica. They show what kind of debt that you should expect to have by each degree that you choose. You know, if you get a bachelor's of science in geology, a nursing degree, they will compare what kind of debt you should expect for each of those programs. And they'll look at kind of compare that to the salaries that you might get with each of those degree. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, that's a federal agency. They also have a website that help you compare different schools and calculate, how much money you're going to be paying after you graduate. Each of your high schools, a lot of them are enrolled in this Naviance program. That's a very powerful website, but it has to be through your high school, has to give you the access to that website. That allows you to look at lots of ways of evaluating whether you want to go to a particular school and enroll in a particular program. Okay, so let's look at this college scorecard. This is that Department of Education. This is kind of what they'll show. You can pick 4 schools. They'll put it up on the screen. You can keep rehashing this and choose 4 different schools, but it kind of gives you a nice visual to compare the cost of different schools. So you've got a state school, you've got Golden Gate University, you've got University of San Francisco, you've got the California Institute of Art in San Francisco. You can see what the average annual cost, the graduation rates are. Like I said, those are important features. And then you could also see the typical salary. Again, this is kind of lumped together. So, they're lumping in all of the degrees for each of those schools. But this seems to be, if you look at the Art Institute, that's likely going to be someone who's in the arts, performing art, visual art program. So be really wary of the salary. It doesn't mean that you're going to be expecting that kind of salary. It's just an average at this particular the way that they presented it here. Okay, school performance fact sheet. Like I said, each school is required to have that. For-profit schools are regulated by California's Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education. That's a great website to go to if you feel that you went for a for-profit school and you've got a complaint. California's BPPE, they monitor that and they're interested in complaints that you might have. They require for-profit schools to keep these fact sheets. They must show for the following 2 years all of the things here. It's a good way to look at these kind of things because, like I said, graduation rates, if they're low graduation rates, be a little bit wary about that. They should show job placements and they should break it down between part-time and full-time employment so that you're not, just because someone has a part-time job, which might not be your goal, doesn't mean that that's a high job placement rate. If most of the placement is for part-time work and your expectation is to be full-time employed with graduating from those schools. Also, license exam passage rates, like for example, if you want to go to law school, they should publish how many people out of that law school actually passed the exam. If you're seeing really, really low numbers, you might be wary because you don't want to graduate with the expectation of becoming a lawyer and then find out that your chances of passing that bar exam is pretty small just based on the education that you got. So look at each one of these in detail, have somebody look over your shoulder if you're not sure how to interpret the data, but don't avoid looking at the school performance fact sheet if you really are considering going for a for-profit school. Okay, here's a performance fact sheet for an example of the University of Phoenix in Bakersfield for a Bachelor's of Science in Business. It's for 2021, 2022. You can see that the on-time completion rate is pretty low. It's down in the 1/4 of all students actually complete the program on time. That's a very low rate. Then there's the job placement rate. Again, that's pretty low too. You're seeing, from 2021, it went from 11% and it dropped in 2022 to 8%. That's people who actually are employed in the field that they graduated. That is a very, very low number. I would caution you if you're considering this program, but if you don't like this outcome, look at another school, look at another program, you might see better numbers. Okay, here's ProPublica. Like I mentioned, they have a website too, looking at the same school, University of Phoenix. 60% of the people that go to the school are on Pell Grants. Those are financial need-based grants. That's a high percentage. The median debt when they get out of school is $14,000. And that shows that of the total cost, they're saying that the average spending for the instruction that the school spends is $2,000 per student. We're going to compare that with another school. Keep those numbers in mind. If you're able to, if you can look at this recorded workshop here, go back and forth between these slides, it'll be easy for you to compare the different numbers. Okay, let's compare UC Berkeley. We're going to go from University of Phoenix, $2,000 spending the school spends per student. Look at that, University of Berkeley. They spend $19,000 per student on instruction. That's the amount of effort that UC Berkeley is putting into your education. That's a huge difference. Look at the cost. It's a very typical debt. The debt is $13,500 compared to the University of Phoenix. It's a lower debt that you're going to be coming slightly. Look at the graduation rates. 88% graduation rate. They're not even publishing that for the University of Phoenix. That should tell you a lot. So use these to compare schools. If you're thinking that you want to get a bachelor's of science degree in business, you might want to look at each school, what the potential of success for you personally is going to be. Okay, let's look at the University. This is also ProPublica. This is the University of California, Berkeley. We've talked about that. Look at the outcomes after graduation. Again, we're going back to the University of Phoenix. This is after you graduate. 76% of those that graduate from the University of Phoenix have difficulty paying their student loan debt. The default rate is 13%, and those that can't even pay at all that have Pell Grants, 82%. Okay. How are people doing after they graduated from the University of Phoenix 10 years later? Remember, most federal typical loans are 10 years. You should pay it off by then. At the University of Phoenix, they're still paying the loan off at $339 per month. And there's a reason for that. They may have struggled. They may have had times when they weren't making payment. Look at all these numbers. I know it's a lot to digest, but take your time. Look at each one of these, because before you go to the school, you want to be sure your expectations are going to be matched with the actual outcomes. Okay, let's look at the University of Berkeley. We're going to compare that outcome after graduation. Only 25% have difficulty making payments on their federal loans, compared to 75% of the people having difficulty University of Phoenix. Okay, the default rate for those that graduate from University of Phoenix, 3% compared to 13%. Higher success rate. Okay, people who have not completed paying off their student loan debt, typically paying $146 a year, a month, 10 years after. Compare that, double that from the University of Phoenix. These are sobering numbers. Pay attention to this. This tells you a lot about your success, your personal success rate. You can use this as guidance to what the likelihood of you having success if you graduate from these two different schools. Okay, as I mentioned, there's a federal Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They also have tools. They will help you make comparisons. Spend your time up front. I know this is overwhelming information, but spend your time up front looking at each of these programs, each of these tools, because it's better to do your homework before you get committed to a school, committed to getting debt that you're locked into. So take the time to use these tools. They're free. And you can have someone help you. You can have a friend. You can do it together. You can have your parents. You can have an aunt or an uncle, or maybe even a guidance counselor, or a librarian might help you if they've got the time. Okay, as I mentioned, there's also a California that will help, a California tool, CSAC. They will help you make some kind of calculation of your debt. I give an example here is trying to calculate what it would mean if you went to Fresno State, and these are the things that you would put in. Are you expecting to do financial aid? How old are you? Do you plan to live on campus? Are you eligible for in-state tuition? Are you married? And so these are the numbers that you would input in order to get the estimate calculated for you. And this is what the California CSAC calculator says. With all those numbers, they would expect the cost of attendance at Fresno would be about $24,000. They would say that for you, the estimated price after you got grants and scholarships to attend would be $14,000. So that's something that you should factor in order to figure out if you can afford to go to that school. And you could keep plugging these numbers into each of the different schools that you're interested in. And if you can't afford it, you might have to look around for additional subsidy for your education. Maybe these scholarships that I mentioned in those scholarship resources that you might find. Okay, like it mentioned, is some high schools are plugged into Naviance. Those will help you assess your own particular strengths and interests. They've got tools like the Myers-Briggs. They will help you explore different careers. If you're not sure you want to be a nurse, or you want to be a lawyer, or you want to be a program manager in construction, it'll help you kind of see which program maybe is the best for you. It'll help you search for the information that you might need to evaluate the different colleges, help you find the scholarships that might be available, and even help you, and they may even announce when some of the college representatives are coming to your school. You can reach these tools through your school guidance counselor, but you cannot do these without having access through your school. The Naviance tool is only available through the school. Okay, so I wanted to let you know what my organization does. We help students and other people who are having issues with their debt. If you get out of college, you're struggling with your student loans, we help people with that. People facing medical debt, people who are in condominium associations struggling with their debt. We also help with credit and debt issues, things that are on your credit report that you don't agree with, or you've had identity theft. We help people who are struggling with their paying their home mortgages. And all these are free except for estate planning, those people trying to plan for their wills and trust. those are done on a sliding scale. The information below will help you reach our organization. I thank you all for attending this workshop, and I hope it was informative. And good luck with your plans for attending college. Thank you so much.